Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is the Surge Effect, and this podcast, well, it'll probably have an effect on you. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Surge Effect. In this episode of the Surge Effect, we are going to be talking about, of course, what happened with Zelinsky and Trump in the office. Been a few days now. Supposedly, Zelinsky wants to get back talking now. It's only been about 48 hours. He was, of course, let out of the White House. They were supposed to have a dinner and stuff, and just had to sign some papers and create a peace deal, and the war would have ended. But anyway, we're going to talk about that and just a few other things about the Ukraine and a little bit about the media as well. So that's what this Surge Effect is going to be about. So hopefully it's not going to be a long one, but hopefully it'll be an enlightening one for you. Before we get started, I always like to talk about two of my sponsors. My first sponsor is Love My Legs, Owen Sound, Grey Bruce. Click on their link below and head on over to their Facebook page and check out all the ladies' leggings that they have to offer. Number two is Heshirtssheshirts. Heshirtssheshirts Plus. Head on over to their website and head on over to their Facebook page. Look at all the things that they have to offer just by clicking the link below. You'd be amazed at all the different pieces of clothing that they have, and they're more than just another t-shirt company. All right. Also like to talk about two different things. I always like to post about Amazon. Let's do my one is going to be my RODECaster Pro II. If you're into what I'm doing right now, podcasting or vlogging or anything like that, and you want to use a recording studio, this is like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment in one piece. Click on the link below. Get yours today. And the thing that goes with it is this right here, the PodMic. Beauty PodMic. I have four of them, and they're great. And they work, of course, with the RODECaster because they all join together. So click on the link below. Head over and get yours today. Okay, so let's get into today's podcast. So first, when I start off, before I get going, I want to just show you this thing here that I found on the internet, which I thought was pretty cool. Basically, it says, would you blindfold yourself and eat whatever someone fed you? No. Then stop letting the media do it to you. Does it to people all the time. All the time. And unfortunately, that's why they call it programming, right? Because people just, they just eat up what they're fed through that little TV box. And the media, if they're good, bad, whatever they are, sometimes people just listen to what they have to say. I have an opinion. A lot of these things are my opinions from the information that I know and the information that I show you, videos, footage, factual stuff. That's how I make my opinion. And other people should do the same. Some people come up with a different opinion from the information that they know. So here's a little clip of Julian Assange talking about media. Here we go.
Hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment. But our number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organizations that try to keep things secret, and those organizations which distort true information to make it false, misrepresentative. in this latter category, it is bad media. It really is my opinion that the media in general are so bad, we would have to question whether the world wouldn't be better off without them altogether. There's some very, very fine journalists, and we work with many of them, and some fine media organizations, but the vast majority are awful and are so distortive to how the world actually is, that the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continue on.
So there you go. That's Julian Assange's take on the media. And, well, you heard it right there, what he had to say. So we're going to move on, of course, to the Oval Office event that occurred a couple of days ago. And, you know, it's got the world talking. You got to remember, a lot of these things are always done behind closed doors. And they did this out in the open. And everyone, you know, cries about, oh, Zelinsky, poor Zelinsky. Well, Trump wants peace. You got to remember that. He wants peace. And Zelinsky kept throwing up about, you know, what Putin is and what he's done and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not going to be conducive to getting things done, right? And then it just went from bad to worst. But this is basically not the whole Oval Office incident, but this is the 4-minute clip of where it went kind of really bad fast. So here we go.
Do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not
cards.
playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
You're
playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of
war.
millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers. Listen,
Please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
That is a fact. And that was the headlines. Obama gave them bed sheets, and Trump did give them javelins to look after those tanks. It's been a long time coming. People can say what they want, and they go, oh, poor Zelinsky. This guy has been given hundreds of billions of dollars and has lost so many lives. So many innocent lives have been taken. Now, just before this broke out, J.D. Vance had this to say to Zelinsky. Now, a lot of people probably didn't, they may or may not have paid attention to what J.D. Vance said here, but it's very interesting. Just listen to what he says.
Talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
So then it goes for a bit of a downside there, a little bit of a shit there after he said that, and you just saw the video before that about them going the back and forth. Now what J.D. Vance just said about them going around and rounding up conscripts, they're literally going around the Ukraine and grabbing guys that are between the ages of 18 and 60. Now, people think that might be kind of crazy. I literally have about 40 minutes of this, but I'm just going to show you just a few clips here and there. Some of it's kind of horrifying. It's kind of horrific when you watch this stuff. So just be warned. It's not very nice, but I'll show you just a few here, and we'll go from there. But this is what J.D. Vance was talking about. This here is from Kanenko the Great. Yesterday, Zelinsky's military recruiters have snatched up younger men off the street, threw them into vans as they were screaming. This young man here was walking his dog. They literally pulled over and grabbed him and tossed him in the back of the van. This was literally just the other day. This was literally just the other day, and as they drove away, there's the young man's dog running behind the van because he was taking it out for a walk. Here's another one here. Same thing. Military guys grabbing these guys. So that's another one, and I'm going to show you just a few more clips here. And this is what J.D. Vance was saying, right? They are so low on people joining the military that they're like literally going around and grabbing these dudes right off the street and tossing them into the back of a vehicle, in the back of a van, and away they go. There's another one. These guys are going to war. They're going to the front line, these guys. That guy got away, and they chased him. and they were actually shooting at him with their pistols to get him to stop. There's another one that jumped out. They'll go back and get him in a bit. There's one right here. Guy's got his pistol out. He's shooting at this guy as he's running away. He doesn't want to go to war. He doesn't want to go to the front line. Some more. There's some more they're grabbing in the streets. Just young men. There's more they're grabbing. Isn't that something? That's what Zelinsky's all about. And that's what J.D. Vance was trying to say. And everyone says, poor Zelinsky. So here's an American soldier. Let's see what this guy has to say in regards to what they're doing over there in Ukraine.
Zelinsky has an offer for the American people and says that we'll be sending our children to fight in the war in Ukraine and Russia. I've got a counteroffer to that. Why don't you take us 40-something-year-old war veterans that have already been there and done that, round us all up and send us in our children's place? But there's one catch. When my boots hit the ground in Ukraine, I won't be going after Russians. I'm coming to see you, sir, for threatening to take my children's lives on a battlefield for a war that I didn't want to be part of in the first place. I think I speak for most Americans when I say, you can kick rocks, pal.
So that's fairly self-explanatory. So here's a little clip of the news media there just talking when Trump was talking to some reporters in regards to being transparent. And it's pretty self-explanatory. He's just being transparent when it came to Zelinsky. And all Zelinsky had to do was just show up, sign some papers, have a little chit-chat, have some lunch, and leave. And this war, where like over 1 million people have been killed, would end. It's that simple. But he couldn't do that. Here we go.
Look, I think the spat in public was actually refreshing. Now, all these diplomats, all these globalists, the same people who failed America in negotiations and meetings, Iraq, Afghanistan, throughout the Middle East, they love having it all play out behind closed doors. That way there's no accountability when they screw up. But it was very important for America to see Zelensky's intransigence today.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long.
He knows the show. And sunlight truly is the best disinfectant. And right now, Zelensky and his enablers are the biggest obstacles toward peace.
We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up as strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight, fight, fight. We're looking to end the death.
See, that's simple. So Zelensky was calling Putin this and Putin that and saying he's bad Putin. Well, of course, you have to have a bad guy, right? Everyone's got to have a bad guy. Think about it. Throughout history, there's always been a bad guy. So during our Cold War back in the 60s and the stuff with Russians, it's always Russians the bad guy. Russians always been the bad guy in the movies, right? They're Russian spies. They're always the bad guy. Osama bin Laden, he was the bad guy, of course, because of the Twin Towers being taken down in New York. Saddam Hussein, bad guy in Iraq, to send in weapons of mass destruction, WMDs that they never, ever found, but yet, thousands of people lost their lives over that lie. You got to open up your eyes and look at and listen to other things in the media, and you got to listen to what happens around the world, because it's not just cut and dried the way you might think. So here's how Scott Jennings kind of felt about what transpired the other day as well.
Zelensky made a huge mistake on Friday. All he had to do was show up and sign this deal, and he just couldn't do it. And sometimes these guys, when they put on the military uniform, they have trouble taking it off. He needs to take off the military garb, put on the garb of diplomacy, and understand that he's got an honest new broker on the field who can actually help him end this war, maintain his sovereignty, maintain prosperity for the Ukrainians. And regarding...
It's that simple. Trump wants peace. That's simple. He just wants peace. But Zelensky wants to drag it on. For what reason? I do not know. But his countrymen are dying by by the tens of thousands. They've been like over 1 million for them in Russia, and he still wants to push stuff. I don't understand it myself, but anyway, I'm going to move on. So this was J.D. Vance speaking to some of the NATO allies when he was over in Europe about a week ago, and he talked about a few different things. One of them was, you'll hear it here in a second, I'm going to fire it up, and then we're going to keep moving on.
I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person, but no. This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. In Washington, there is
So he's basically talking about freedom of speech, freedom to pray. People are arrested in Europe for what they called a thought crime. That's sick, right? You wouldn't believe it if you didn't hear it, but it's true. And these are types of things you wouldn't normally see on mainstream media. So here is this Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, when they met with Trump and J.D. Vance. And this is what Starmer had to say in regards to the speech that J.D. gave a couple weeks ago. Here we go.
In his remarks at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK, particularly. Could you respond? What is your message?
I have an idea. We have the man right here. Come on. Let's go, JD. We're putting you on stage.
Great. Yeah, look, I said what I said, which is that
We do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, but we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of that.
Well, Keir Starmer, yeah, he should be ashamed of himself, because I did a podcast a little while ago about a fellow by the name of Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson was speaking up for things that were going on in his country. And they put him in prison for showing a video, because he's a journalist too, for showing a video that they told him not to show. And he did on social media. And they put him in prison. And he's in prison to this day. And this was taken back in October. So listen to what he has to say about Keir Starmer.
Best time for me to do a video is after the gym. It's when I feel great. After smashing my workout, which I've just done. I've had my son by my side. 7 days, which has been fabulous. This is a message to each of you who are thinking about the 26th of October. Maybe you're worried, maybe you're scared. Maybe you think you might lose your job, maybe you think you might get put in prison. We will organise this properly like we did the last ones. You've seen what happens at our events. You've seen the celebration. Let's send a message to the world, to Keir Starmer especially, that the fight is not gone, okay? Not in us anyway. I am travelling back to the UK for literally the fight of my life. I'm fully aware of that. They may throw me to the dogs in prison. I will have to fight for my survival. So men right now are fighting for their lives in prison, who have been falsely imprisoned, unlawfully imprisoned, pressured and forced and blackmailed to plead guilty to crimes they haven't committed. All of this will come up in our documentary, which will premiere on the 26th of October. This date is so important. Lads, if you're thinking, oh, fucking my football team's playing this team, who gives a shit, right? Our democratic rights have been trampled all over by a communist, tyrannical government who do not care about freedom. Everything this country was built on. The Magna Carta has been abolished and trampled all over by Keir Starmer. Okay? The two-tier policing, the judiciary. The world is watching right now. This is the most important moment in any of our battles.
Now, you probably have never heard of Tommy Robinson, but right now, just like he said, he might end up in prison. He released that video, and he is, in fact, in prison right now over in Britain. So Keir Starmer, he can take his freedom that he said in the Oval Office there to JD and say that they're awfully proud of it. Yeah. You know what he can do with that? Yeah. You betcha. All right, let's get back to the Ukraine. This gentleman here, he needs no introduction. This is General Michael Flynn. General Michael Flynn served 35 years in the military, in the United States military. And he was the one that got jacked around by the FBI when Trump was first elected into office. Now, Michael Flynn, he literally lost everything. He had to remortgage his house. He lost his life savings, everything, trying to fight the government, because the government has endless money because it's the taxpayers' money, and fighting for his rights. And he finally won. Here's what he has to say in regards to the Ukraine. You may or may not like it, but it's a fact. Here we go.
What we're seeing in Ukraine is we're seeing a country that is, and everybody knows this now, there's no more hiding this. You know, so why is Ukraine so important? Well, it's a hub for human trafficking. It's a hub specifically for child trafficking. It's a hub for narcotics trafficking. It's a hub for weapons trafficking. We know about our biolabs because Victoria Nuland said we had them there. I mean, we've always known that, but you know, that's stated now publicly. And there's a lot of money just flowing into this this country. And you say to yourself, where is this money going? And is it money laundering? Is it money laundering? I mean, money laundering, you name it. You know, just this week, and it may not have come up on your screen, but I know you pay attention a lot. I mean, there's a couple of people, I think one of them is like somebody in the Ministry of Defense there, and it might be the Minister of Defense, or maybe somebody in his orbit. They're buying these gigantic homes for, you know, millions and millions of dollars. And you say to yourself, how is this the case?
So that's what he had to say about the Ukraine. And now here's Robert F. Kennedy talking about not only the Ukraine, but how things kind of work with the military. Once again, listen up. Make up your own mind. What do you think?
War that should have never happened. It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed another $24 billion since then, 2 months ago, and now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big, big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? Because if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainian kids, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then in December, President Biden gave out the contract to rebuild Ukraine. And who do you think got that contract? BlackRock. So they're doing this right in front of us. They don't even care that we know anymore, because they know that they can get away with it. And how do they know that? Because they have a strategy. And that strategy is an old strategy, which is they keep us at war with each other. They keep us hating on each other. They keep the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other, black against white, and all these divisions that they sow.
See? The oldest trick in the book, right? Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Of course, Robert F. Kennedy there, he was talking about about NATO as well, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. There's 31 countries in NATO, and I was kind of liken it to like the mafia or the mob. If you're not part of the group and something happens, then they'll just go and sort you out. Russia wanted to be part of NATO back in the early 90s when Bill Clinton was president. But Bill Clinton first said, well, yeah, you can become part of NATO. And then he got back, talked to his people, and it was like, that's not going to happen. Why? Because I believe they need a big bad wolf, and that big bad wolf happens to be Russia. But there are 31 other countries in NATO, and Ukraine wants to be part of NATO, and they are not going to get to be part of NATO. Russia doesn't want part of NATO sitting right next door to them, because then they could, have the rest of these 31 countries could go in there, and they could put labs in there, they could put missiles in there, defense system, whatever they want. Well, you don't want that right off the coast. No different than America didn't want Russian missiles during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 60s, missiles in Cuba, 90 miles off the coast of Florida. It's the same kind of principle, right? But people don't look at it that way. They go, oh, it's Ukraine, Ukraine. So here's something to think about. Speaking of NATO, right here is the divisions of what's the percentage of people that are in those 31 different countries. Here are just a few of these countries, and what they spend as a percentage of NATO. Look at those numbers. United States spends 70% of NATO. Look at Canada, 2%. U.S. is 70%, and they want out. No wonder they want out, because they're basically funding it. They're funding NATO. They're putting in the majority of the money. That's why Trump wants out, and everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't leave NATO. What are you, crazy? It's all about numbers too, folks. It's like a business, right? Anyway, that's that part of you got to follow the money, right? And of course, he was talking about Robert F. Kennedy was talking about Zelinsky, and then he was talking about BlackRock, right, and how this works. Well, look at this. Zelinsky meets with BlackRock, J.P. Morgan, Chase Bridgewater, ArcelorMittal from Blackstone. USA businesses' interests swoop in to take over the Ukraine economy. See, this is what they want. They want this.
Chase, God bless you.
Thank you so much.
How are you? Fine, thank you. Great to see you.
See the picture in the background? World Economic Forum. Look at that. It's all about the money, folks. It's about the money. They don't give a shit about the people that are dying by the tens of thousands and millions. It's about cash flow. It's all about cash flow. Anyway, so here's another little clip. This is of Tulsi Gabbard talking about what's going on in the Ukraine. Just little eye-openers, folks. Little eye-openers. Here we go.
Here is something that the political establishment and propaganda media don't want you to know. Ukraine's President Zelinsky has just banned yet another political opposition party, one that questioned his legitimacy as president, and used Ukraine's Department of Justice to mandate the seizure of this party's members' assets. Now, this is just the latest of Zelinsky's actions to do this sort of thing. He began banning major political opposition parties in 2022, when he also started banning TV channels that were associated with his political opponents. And he took over total control of Ukraine's largest television networks, now controlled by their government. Now, Zelensky's presidential term ended on May 20th. He canceled elections in the name of martial law, suspending Ukraine's constitution so that he could stay in power. Now, defenders of Zelensky will say, hey, Ukraine is in the middle of a war. They can't have elections. Just stop for a moment and think, if we accept that excuse or criteria for suspending the Constitution and canceling elections, then we should presume that leaders in our own country and our own establishment media will also use this same excuse and rationale when they suspend our Constitution and our elections, since we too are at war with Russia and China. If you think this sounds crazy, look at what's already going on. They've already started conditioning us to accept a dictatorship by rationalizing their own use of our Department of Justice to target President Trump and other political enemies in their efforts to stay in power.
Looking at things from a different point of view, kind of eye-opening, isn't it? So everyone always says about Putin being a dictator. He's a dictator. Well, you just heard what Tulsi Gabbard had to say about what Zelensky was actually doing and has done. Is that or is it not a dictator? Good question. Leave your comments below. Here's Tucker Carlson. He's going to be talking a little bit about what he believes Zelensky is. Listen.
The first feature of a dictator is he's not elected. So Zelensky's not elected. He's also, well, he's banned a religious denomination. He's murdered his political opponents. He has banned a language group. Those all seem like features of dictatorship to me. Now, he has the support of the British intelligence agencies. That doesn't mean he's not a dictator, though. That sounds like a dictator. I mean, if I just gave you a piece of paper and I'm like, here are some qualities of a European leader, you would say, well, that guy, that's not legitimate. That guy's a dictator. I can't support that. But his name's Zelensky, and he was once a comedian, and he does my show, so he's not a dictator. I think it's a dictator.
Well, sounds like a dictator, right? Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, probably a duck. So here's something to think about as well. Let's pop this up on the screen here so we can have a read. I'll read it to you. Zelensky canceled the election in his country, consolidated all TV outlets to state TV, dissolved rival political parties, threw Christians in jail for being too closely tied to Russia. He's a dictator. And Bernie is a clown. They're talking about Bernie Sanders because Bernie says Trump berates Zelensky and the leader of the democratic country courageously fighting Russian imperialism while he aligns himself with Putin, a dictator who started the bloodiest European war in 80 years. So you see how they're going back and forth, one against the other, pitting each other against the other. It's an interesting little take. So here's another thing that was just dropped the other day. Ukrainian officials released kickback numbers that they gave. This is from the Ukraine. U.S. politicians received Joe Biden $92 million, Mitch McConnell $89 million, Nancy Pelosi $86 million, Chuck Schumer $66 million, Lindsey Graham $82 million, Mitt Romney $71 million, John Cornyn $41 million, Adam Schiff $62 million, Dan Crenshaw $20 million, Elizabeth Cheney $77 million, and Kevin McCarthy $42 million. That was just dumped the other day on Twitter. Follow the money is a good one. Speaking of following the money, this is what Canada has contributed to the Ukrainian war. Here, I thought the other day, I thought it was only a billion that we've given them, but I was wrong. And this is what we've actually given them. This is what Canada, with all our problems in Canada, this is what we have given Ukraine.
We've also invested close to $20 billion in
$20 billion.
in $20 billion in supports for Ukraine, military, economic, and other. And we're going to continue to be there to support Ukraine.
Be there, whatever he said, whatever it takes, whatever it costs. What's the cost? Is it going to be the dissolvement of Canada, the destruction of Canada, the brutality of all its people gone, everything gone, just sell everything and we'll have a big fire sale, sell it all? What cost? I'm a look after Canada first. How about that? Take care of Canada first. Just like Trump said in America, look after America first, look after Canada first. But that doesn't seem to be this guy's motto. Anyway, I'm going to leave you this one last little clip. This is going to be a long podcast, but I'm going to leave you this last little clip. This guy's a Ukrainian politician, and he talks about what's happened to him and a little bit about the Bidens. Very interesting. And this guy here even tells you his name. You can look it up. Check it out. But here's the clip.
Hello, Mr. President Trump. My name is Alexander Dubinsky, and I'm a member of the Ukrainian parliament. I have been in prison for 14 months, for one reason only. I told the truth about the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. In 2019, I was the first to expose how Joe Biden was using Ukraine for his personal financial gain. I exposed how his son, Hunter Biden, got millions of dollars through offshore schemes and Burisma. I spoke as a lawmaker, and I spoke as a patriot of Ukraine. But after Biden won in 2020, Zelensky's government, following Washington crazy orders, opened 4 absolutely stupid and fake criminal cases against me. In November 2023, they put me in prison. No evidence, no trial, no investigation. I was never even asked for testimony. They just want to shut me up and silence my public voice, but they failed. They failed because Biden's corruption is a fact. It's a fact. The American Congress and American court have proven that Hunter Biden received money from Ukrainian officials. He confessed to it. But who's in prison? Dubinsky, not Biden. For what? For speaking the truth about Biden's corruption at a press conference. For exposing Soros' network, the same Soros who is together with Yermak and Zelensky helped to steal your election in 2020. For fighting corruption that steals billions and billions from American taxpayers under the cover of aid to Ukraine. And how do they label me? A Russian agent. Why? Just simply because I was near Derkach, someone I have no ties to. Just like I have no ties to Russia or Russian intelligence. Does it seem familiar, Mr. Trump? They did the same to you. They call everyone who speaks about Biden's corruption a Russian agent. They destroy the truth so they can keep stealing billions and billions of dollars under the cover of helping Ukraine.
See? Interesting. You can find this video just probably as fast as I found it. Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know. Anyway, that was very interesting what that guy had to say for sure. My last video I'm going to show you is one I found on Twitter, And this guy is an American, and he is straight up, and he is on point, the stuff that he says. You may or may not agree with what he says, but you know what? It's a couple minutes long. It's well worth the listen. This is the last video I post.
Dear Americans, if you're waving a Ukrainian flag or putting a Ukrainian flag in your bio, I want to ask you, what exactly are you supporting? Are you supporting a war that the US and Europe sparked by constantly expanding NATO closer to Russian borders since 1994? Are you supporting a war that was sparked by the US helping to overthrow a democratically elected Ukrainian president in 2014 because he was pro-Russian? Are you supporting a war that was instigated by Biden supporting Ukraine joining NATO in 2021, which would be like Mexico entering a military alliance with Russia? Are you supporting funding war or forging peace? Now, to be clear, Putin started this war. Putin broke international law. Putin has blood on his hands. But our government has been giving other governments excuses to fight wars. Weapons companies who own our politicians profit from war and find new reasons to start war, give them excuses. U.S. aid, which has been undermining foreign governments under the guise of humanitarian aid, gives them excuses. Cowardly Republican and Democrat career politicians who go along with all of that give them excuses. If we want to stop wars, then we need to stop giving other countries reasons to start them. Now, we can all have empathy for Zelensky. He's had to endure 3 years of watching his people suffer at the hands of Putin. But legacy media painted him as a victim in that press conference. They ignored how Zelensky behaved for the first 39 minutes of a 50-minute press conference. They ignored that Zelensky kept calling Putin a killer and a terrorist while our president was trying to make peace. They ignored that Zelensky said Russia should pay for everything while our president was trying to make a deal. They ignored that Zelensky threatened Americans that Putin will attack America while we're trying to stop the attacks on Ukraine. They ignored that Zelensky is fighting a war with money that isn't his, while our president is fighting for peace. Stop buying this. Stop buying the story that we need to fight Putin forever. Stop buying the story that we need to use American money for Ukrainians and Russians to die. Stop buying the story that Trump talking to Putin to create peace is somehow wrong. Stop and ask yourself, what exactly are you supporting? Are you supporting peace for the Ukrainian people, or are you supporting governments who get in the way of peace?
Now that's awesome. That guy did a phenomenal job of putting that piece together. And that in a nutshell, what are you supporting? What are you supporting them for? Right? What's the reasoning behind it? Anyway, that's it for today's podcast, everyone. It was a long one. Sorry about that, but I had a lot of videos I want to get out there, and there's a lot of information that hopefully you can you got something back from, and I shared something with you. Before I sign off, I'd like to thank everyone for subscribing to my channel, sharing my channel. Please like, please share, spread it around, let people see it. I also post shorts as well. You probably see them on the internet as well. I post little shorts from my main videos. But I'd like to thank everyone that's been watching me so far, and please, feel free to share my videos. It's much appreciated. Helps with the algorithm on YouTube. Helps my channel grow. Before I sign off, I always like to say one thing about life. People going through this life. And everyone, it goes through something. Everyone goes through hardships. Everyone is going through something in this life because life isn't easy. It's tough. It's a hard road to follow sometimes. And that's for everyone, right? It's not easy. But you got to do one thing. You got to keep doing this thing. Always move forward. Keep moving forward. Head towards your goals. Head towards what you want to do and head forward. There's nothing for you back there because yesterday's history and tomorrow's a mystery and today's the present. That's why they call it the gift. With that being said, keep moving forward. And until next time, cheers, everyone.